This episode's brought to you by Burleigh Miami Auto Centre, or BMAC, reliably servicing the vehicles on the Gold Coast for over 55 years. Check them out at www.burleighauto.com.au.
Welcome back to another episode of So What Does That Mean? We've been overwhelmed by your support so far, and we're so excited to bring you today's episode on the hidden costs of We'll Fix It Later. Brendan, can you give us a couple of examples of what the hidden fix it later problems are?
Yeah, look, some of the key points that I think we see day in, day out are deferred decisions, taking too long or potentially procrastinating on a decision for a longer period of time, taking design shortcuts. Ultimately end up, you're having to go through the long road later on down the track. And late fixes can cost exponentially more.
Okay. So why do you think delaying decisions saves money?
Well, I think delays feel reversible. If people think that decisions feel permanent.
Okay. So they sort of feel stuck, like they've made that choice and they can't undo it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And, say they don't want to be pressured to make a decision today. They feel as though, they can mentally push that risk to the future me, and I can deal with it later on. People confuse flexibility with control. Just because the decision's made, is it finite? Can you change it? Is it definitive? I mean, there's reasons why the development process has a minor change application, for example, is that once you go through the process, everything down to the T is not completely ironed in. You may be able to go back and change it later on if you want to. So they do provide that sort of flexibility. And the other key point there too is, I think, cash not spent. I think people feel as though if you haven't spent cash, it feels like you've saved cash.
Right. So because you haven't constructed it yet, or you haven't got to that point in construction, and so they haven't outlaid that money yet. Is that but when they get to that point, that's when they go, oh dear, we've now got this, and this, and these issues were brought up to us earlier on in the piece. So then you've got delays.
Exactly. And, if you don't make that decision at that point, ultimately, if you've purchased some land or you've purchased an asset that's waiting to be developed, or you've borrowed some money to do a renovation, those loans need to be serviced. In the industry, we've got a term called the waiting tax. So the waiting tax, generally speaking, annual inflation in construction is about 5%. So, if you're delaying a $500,000 build, it means every single month there's about $2,000 additional that you've got to then pay to be able to get things done again.
Yep.
I mean, there's a reason why builders and contractors have limits on their quotations in terms of engagement. Once you're locked in, you're bound by the costs that they have there, and they've got their labor costs, they've got supplier costs, material costs, everything that comes into play at that point. So if you get a quote from somebody and don't build for 2 years, chances are that quote's going to change.
Yes.
It's likely going to increase quite a bit.
Yes.
And you're going to pay additional dollars just because it's taken 2 years to engage them.
Yes. Okay. So what's the most expensive small decision that you've ever seen?
Look, we actually see a lot of them.
Okay.
which is quite interesting. And it comes down to making the decision and making the commitment. Look, soil test is a classic one. Several times we have seen, clients opt to either, for whatever reason, not want to spend the small investment of the soil tests. So soil testing can range anywhere from, a couple $100 to about $3,000 or $4,000, depending on the type of testing that you need to do, the results that you're requiring, the location you are.
So just to confirm for people who don't understand, why would you need a soil test in the first place?
Yeah.
Sorry to backtrack a little bit,
right.
guys.
We'll backstep a little bit. So soil testing is a key parameter that engineers are required to design to. So,
So is that if you're putting something into the grounds, like if you're building like a house slab or a shed slab or
Yep.
something like that?
Yeah, so generally any structure that goes in the ground, engineers work their way from the top of the structure down. So
Okay.
we calculate all the loading from all of the materials that are within the structure,
Mhm.
and that's called dead loading. So
Mhm.
that's the load of all the materials themselves,
Mhm.
just sitting there. Then you've got the live loading. So you've got things like wind. You might have snow on your roof. You might have the shake of an earthquake, for
Mhm.
example. These are all loads that are applied to the structure, which
Mhm.
are over and on top of the dead loads that are already there.
Right.
So we have things that are called load combinations. They take safety factors into play, and what we have to do, governed by our standards, is we take the worst case load combination.
Mhm.
There's about 7 of them. And then we go, okay, so this is the worst case load combination. So therefore we now transfer those loads from the top of the structure to the ground or to the base of the structure.
Mhm.
From there, we then design our foundation to suit the structure above,
Mhm.
but also the resistant loadings that the ground has
Okay.
underneath. So ground is measured in pressure.
Mhm.
You've got ground pressure. So if you've naturally got some rock, for example, it's not moving very quickly
Yeah.
at all.
But if you're building on sand, it's a completely different story.
Exactly
Okay.
right. Exactly. So soil testing's key. Most engineers, probably 99% of them, won't proceed without having a soil test actually given to them or some soil parameters provided to them. On occasions, we have designed things based on assumed parameters, but then pass that risk or that activity onto the contractor or the client to go and engage their own soil tester at a later date and confirm that their test is in accordance with what we've assumed.
Okay. So
Just
what happens if you don't do that? So what happens if they go, no, we don't need a soil test, just design it for me.
Yeah.
You go design something that could be like over and above what they actually need.
exactly. So we will take a worst case scenario. So we would go,
So
okay,
that would obviously mean building something over and above what you need costs more.
exactly.
Okay.
So if we are, say we're building somewhere where there is rock at about 500 millimeters below the ground.
Mhm.
It doesn't take too long to get to a nice solid ground
Mhm.
to be able to bear the loadings
Mhm.
that are imposed upon the structure. If you were then going to do the same structure, but in a content for 10 meters down below, so you've got 10 meters of clay, which is movable or reactive ground. We would then be doing a deeper and larger foundation to withstand the same loads because
Right.
the resistant loads will be lower.
Yep. Okay. So spending a couple $100 on a soil test is the difference between like thousands of dollars on your footing design
It can save you.
construction.
It can save you so much. So, I mean, if you spent, $500 on a soil test to go out and confirm the parameters, it will save you potentially $50,000 to $100,000 later on down the track.
Wow.
Because we're talking volumes of concrete, we're talking
Yes.
reinforcement, we're then talking labor hours to be able to dig that and put that in place. You might have to remove tree roots, you might have to remove all these other things that come into play under the ground that we don't know are there until such time that we go and do that. So
Right.
a small couple $100 investment at the start can save you a lot later on. I can think of one particular example without citing specifics, but the quote for the soil test was $850, and ended up costing them at least about another $75,000 to be able to actually go and construct the foundation that was designed.
Far out.
Obviously at that point, we jumped in and said, hey, we need to redo this. And the reason we need to redo this is because we need to go get a soil test. We got, we spoke to someone with a bit of sense and they paid the dollars to get the soil test. The footing was being able to be redesigned and assessed. And it took $75,000 approximately out of the construction of your cost.
Right. So, a couple $100 for a soil test and maybe a little variation from the engineer could save you thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And I mean, another classic one that we see through the development process is a interesting one. A lot of clients that we have come to us at JCE, they come to us when they've already got their approval from the development, and they've gone to their town planner, their architects, etc. They've got an approval over the line.
Yeah.
They've come back and they've said, "Well, hang on, I've got all these conditions that I've now got to adhere to," and we go, "Yeah, that makes sense because it's all written in the planning code, and yes, you should be doing that from the start."
Right.
But what's happened is whoever has made the decision to go in to get an approval, so provide the minimum possible to get an approval over the line, to be able to then get the approval. And then once they have the approval, they can move forward with their project. They can sell the property off. They can do whatever they want to do at that point and make that decision. Now, the problem with that is just because you find the first decision doesn't mean it's the right decision. Now, the only way you're going to find out the right or the most optimized decision is to go through the engineering plans in detail and get a full construction set of plans. If you get a full construction set of plans, you can then take that to a contractor or a builder. They can then provide you accurate pricing. That then goes into your feasibility, and then those numbers will tell you whether your property is going to be feasible or not. You're not going to know that until you get to that stage.
Right. And no one can tell you that information, not definitively anyway.
No one's going to tell you that because it's lines on a piece of paper. They need detail, right, to be able to do that. No contract. So the clients that we have seen who have come have come to us, we've done the DA process and the engineering at the start early on. They've spent a little bit more for the engagement at the start because of the detail that's required. But a lot of them don't have any conditions. They might have one or two real simple little things.
Yeah.
Go on and amend the plans or update the plans to suit that. Tick, away you go, get a price, and they're off developing.
Right. And I suppose that probably saves them a heap of time as well.
Well, they're not stuck in this little no man's land of trying to go back to consultants and trying to get
all the
things revised and updated all the time.
Yeah.
And that comes back into your waiting tax, for example. So all of these things start to play on everyone's mind.
Yeah, I know. Just talking to one of our town planners the other day, he said that he had a client that had rung him last year, wanting to talk about subdividing her land, and she knew the size of the lots, and she knew how much she could sell them for, but didn't proceed with anything, and then has come back this year, and she's actually, I think she could have done 4 lots, and it's now been reduced to 3 because the planning code was updated. So she'd have still pretty much the same construction costs, but she's actually got 1 less lot now to be able to sell.
Classic.
So, I think that would make that project not feasible for her.
Yeah, it's a classic compliance change, and you can throw that's from a local government point of view in terms of the development. Throw a building on that. Yeah. And then throw the building code changes. It's changing every 6 to 12 months at the moment.
Yeah.
And the changes are not small. They're quite significant, to the extent that some people start a build or a development or an approval to be able to get things sorted, and they're not locked in. And then by the time they actually get to the phase where they go to the certifier or whoever's looking at it, the code's changed.
Yes.
So now they're going to go back and change all of their documentation to suit the new code changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So when would you say early advice is actually cheaper?
Look, I think, before drawings, locked dimensions and levels, I think is a big one. The detail that comes in your drawing stages, and most people don't understand that there are several drawing stages.
Right.
Generally speaking, if you're wanting to get something over the line quickly, there's just a straightforward concept and then a final, right? But there is a concept design, there's a preliminary design, there's a detailed design, which is generally your for approval design. So you would use that to submit to your authorities to get approval. Once you've got all the feedback from the authorities, the stakeholders, you would then change that to a issue for construction or an IFC set of plans. So the two while they're quite similar, and a lot of the time it is just changing a stamp because, your 4 approval plans can be quite detailed.
Yes.
But there are some significant changes. And the
Mm-hmm.
significant changes can include things like availability of materials.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 construction plans, the 4 approval plans might have specified, some material for whatever. It might be a concrete pit,
Mm-hmm.
precast concrete pit, for example, and by the time you select a contractor and decide which way you want to go with them, they may not be making that type of pit anymore.
Oh, okay.
They may now propose an alternative plastic pit
Right.
for whatever reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
That now changes all your drawings, all your cost, all your bill of quantities, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are trying to construct something that doesn't match what your approval says.
Right. Okay.
So before you lock in those drawings, I think is saves you a lot of time and heartache later on.
Mm-hmm. So would that be probably a time to be having chats with your builder or your civil contractor, just be saying like, what's your preferred materials that you like? What's your preferred, way of going about things? Because I know we've had lots of people come back, oh, my builder doesn't want to use steel, they want to use timber.
Yeah.
And I know you guys roll your eyes all the time because you're like, oh gosh, I wish we'd known that at the start, because we've pretty much got to redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because obviously they can take different loads and all of that. So is it wise for people to have those conversations? Like, you're not locking someone in, but like have those conversations so you've got an idea to pass on to your engineer?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think your contractor and your builder relationship is a lot more of a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be with them for a long period, or the longer period of your project.
Yeah.
The decisions that they're making are, risky. The risks are a lot higher. The costs are a lot higher. The delays are a lot higher. A lot sits with them. So you sort of want to take a concept level amount of design to a builder or a contractor and go, look, I want to partner with you guys later on, but I'm going through the design at the moment. Can you help me direct the design?
Yeah.
And most contractors and builders will be more than happy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they would jump head over heels to be able to do
the opportunity. Yeah.
Because most people will come to them with a locked-in design, a locked-in approval, locked-in bill of quantities that they don't want to change. And they're forever beating their head against the wall with an engineer trying to be able to get them to update it to suit them rather than what you actually want at the end anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the other thing to consider there too is the risk side of things. I mean, the safety and design process is a very detailed process. It drives the design, and it means basically when you go through the design process, you're highlighting the key risks in the project or in the build project that you're actually doing. And those risks are still theoretical in the design phase.
Mm-hmm.
You can design out a risk.
Right.
Whereas when you are actually on site and you're constructing, it's generally too little too late when you've highlighted a lot of these risks. And if you do highlight a risk or a concern for whatever reason during construction, the remediation is quite large.
Mm-hmm. I think the best way to wrap up today's episode is delaying decisions doesn't remove the risk. It just hides it until it's more expensive. Most shortcuts don't save money. They just defer the understanding. The projects that run well aren't the ones with the most advice. They're the ones where the right decisions are made early, while change is still a cheaper option. If you want control, don't wait. Ask earlier, decide sooner, and know what it actually means before it costs you. That wraps up episode 4 of this week. Reach out to us on all the socials. We're on all of them. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify. And next episode will be what compliant actually means. See you next time.